Gold Coasters. Thanks so much for having me here on your virtual author encounter. I really appreciate Gold Coast Library inviting me for this event. So, I'm Fiona McArthur. I write for Penguin Random House, and the next book that I have coming out for Penguin Random House Australia is The Bush Telegraph. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Bush Telegraph. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about me and how writing and my life fit together, about why I really enjoy being an author and connecting with readers, and maybe what I'm reading at the moment, and maybe what my next big plans are. So stick around for the next half an hour and we'll get to know each other a little better. I'm really looking forward to it. So, this is my new book. The Bush Telegraph comes out on the 1st of September. I'm actually very blessed. I live in the country, it's halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. And there's quite a nice little net of authors and writers around here that we all connect with, and we bounce off each other and we learn from each other all the time. Up the road is Carly Lane. Carly Lane actually has read my book and she's given me a beautiful intro to it. It says, a wonderful, heartwarming read with characters to fall in love with. I was really chuffed when Carly offered to do that. So thank you, Carly. I hope you all think the same thing when you read the book. As I said, I write about midwifery. So I've been a midwife at Kempsey Hospital for more than 30 years. I've retired now. And my husband was a paramedic in the local area for more than 30 years, and he too is retired. But we have a network of people who we know, who we've met in momentous times of their lives. And a lot of that connection with the country and connection with past clients and people who needed you in their moment of life change are in the books, you know. I mean, you just, once a nurse, once a midwife, you're always a nurse or a midwife or a paramedic. I think in your mind, you always feel that need to be there for people. And I think passing that over to my characters is really fulfilling for me, and I hope you really enjoy their work ethic, their morals, their ethos for helping people, because there are a lot of amazing health workers out there who are just incredible, especially in these times, but in all times and in all places. My huge kudos go to health workers, and I share a little bit in the books with this. So I'll read you a little bit from the cover of the Bush Telegraph just to give you an idea of where the book's set and what's happening. So it's been, have you heard about the new girls in town is the byline. It's been more than 10 years since Maddie Locke left Spinifex, the small outback town where she gave birth to her daughter, Bridget, as a young mum. In my world, I've had a lot to do with young mums. I used to run young mum classes for about 10 years. We called it Tim Tams, Teenage Information Mornings, Teens as Mums. And a lot of those young mums who went on to be amazing young women as mothers are still my friends, either in person, on Facebook, Instagram. We still connect, and I'm still so honoured to have been a part of their lives. So I guess young mums and teen pregnancies always have a little moment in a lot of my books. So yeah. Anyway, this is Maddie. Maddie was 20 when she had her baby. She gave birth to her daughter, Bridget. Now she's back to Spinifex to prove she's got what it takes to run the medical centre and face the memories of that challenging time in her life. You'll hear about the challenges, a little bit of past DV that's challenging to get over, and this is Maddie's not get over as much, but to deal with on her terms, and that's a big thing of this book. Everything's changed when Maddie arrives. The pub's gone, her new colleagues aren't pleased to see her, and it's drier and hotter than ever. It's actually really funny. So I was a midwifery educator for the last few years of my my work life, and we all the midwives who worked there, we all grew old together. Not old, but we did a long, illustrious career together. And the new things were really tough to take on, you know, the computers, the increase of online workload that you had to do, the ticking of the boxes, the bureaucracy and paperwork, and well, it was computer work. That really changed in that last 5 years in the hospitals in New South Wales. And I've carried a little bit of that over to Phyllis and Rita, my 2 retirement age nurses who work in the medical centre, and we're hoping that nobody would come and take over the centre and that they'd have to close it, and that these 2 ladies would have their redundancy and be able to retire. So they're not all that pleased that Maddie's turned up, this bright young thing with knowledge. So station owner, this is my other main character, is Connor Fairhall, who thought he'd left the drama behind in Sydney, and we'll talk more about Connor's drama later. But moving back to Spinifex with his rebellious son Jaden hasn't been the fresh start he envisaged. Poor old Connor. His brother Kyle is drinking too much. And it's interesting, I brought that in because I read an article about country towns working towards getting that message across to the young blokes that drink until drunk isn't cool. It isn't manly. That times have changed. And yeah, it all started with the don't drink and drive, and it's just got better and better after that. But it's still a little prevalent, especially in times of drought, in times of distress. And we talk a little bit about that in the book too. So social issues, but real people, real problems, and talking about ways to support others in these things. So his brother Kyle's drinking too much, and the only bright spot on Connor's horizon is meeting Nurse Maddie, who's breathing new life into the weary town up the road, little by little. Can Maddie ignore the rumours about Connor? And what is those rumours that run along the Bush Telegraph? And risk her heart again? Or will the Bush Telegraph spread along the wire fences and stand in the way of trust? So Apple Books said in my last book, I actually was really thrilled. I had this lovely book of the month from Apple Books Australia, and they said McArthur has a knack for funny, realistic dialogue, and her characters are equally charming and complex. Well, thank you, Apple, because that's really what I'm striving for. I'm striving for people to feel connected to people. So that's the Bush Telegraph. At the end of the event that we have today, I'll actually be answering questions from Gold Coast Libraries, so they'll send those through and I'll pop that on as a little extra at the end. So please send in your questions because I'd love to answer them. So what inspired you to write the book? These are some of the questions that have already been sent to me. Last year, when we were all allowed to visit other places in Australia and overseas, my friend Jay Ford, who writes crime as Jay Ford and romantic comedy as Jeanette Paul, we went up to the Outback Writers Festival. We were invited to present there and hold some workshops, which we just absolutely loved doing. So the Outback Writers Festival is held up near Winton, out past Longreach and before you get to Boulia. And Boulia's pretty well where I set this book, yeah. But somewhere between Winton, Boulia and Windora down in the bottom, because that was where I set Red Sand Sunrise. So all that sort of area is involved with these 3 books that I set in that one area. So I went to the Outback Writers Festival and we had a fabulous time, and I met amazing people, you know, like the guy who works on the station owner who writes in his spare time, leaning up against the tractor at lunchtime by hand and just writes a couple of thousand words at lunchtime on Smoko. He's just a really fast writer, and we read his stuff. It was amazing, totally nothing to do with what we expected he'd write about, no tractors. But yeah, it's amazing to meet people from different walks of life who write and have beautiful, beautiful insights into the land. Anyway, after the event, we were invited by the Red Dirt Tours in Winton, and they took us up to the top of a place called Rangelands. So Rangelands is a holding with a jump up on their land. So when you're going out, as you know, or if you've done it, as you drive between Longreach and Winton, there's a lot of those jump ups, those messes that are just sitting out in the middle of the paddocks. So the messes are actually they're actually what's left of what everything was, and everything else is washed away, and you're left with these beautiful flat topped mountains with rocks on the edges that are crumbling and falling down. So they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So Rangelands actually has this incredibly beautiful mesa on this property, and that became, in my mind, Connor's property. So we got to go to visit Connor's property. Connor took Maddie up to the top of the mesa through the jump up. So they call them jump ups, but the lady on the tour told us that actually the jump up is the road that goes from the bottom to the top. But yeah, when you get up there, it's just like twisted trees and the view, which is plains forever until you see another jump up and mesa. And it's just the most beautiful land with gorgeous brown sunsets and everything turns gold, and it was pretty incredible. So yeah, if anyone asks me what the inspiration for this story is, that's the inspiration for the setting, because I just was blown away by the beautiful scenery out past Winton. The other inspiration, of course, is my young mums and the towns out back, because I really, really love the people in the towns. What did I most enjoy about writing it? Well, I guess I've always liked dialogue. So I love writing dialogue between people that are not quite sure about each other and are trying to find out some things, and a little bit of wit and a little bit of snark, and I really, really enjoy dialogue. So I'd say that's the most enjoyable. Although taking photos so that you can make sure you've got your scenery right is always really fun too. So I had lots and lots of photos to look through. The readers may be familiar with the town of Spinifex, because in my book, The Baby Doctor, where you meet the third sister, who was an obstetrician who came to an outback town to find out what was happening with some babies that were being born with congenital abnormalities and a high miscarriage rate, and she had to discover what was going on in the background to make this happen. So that was called The Baby Doctor, because she was an obstetrician. One of the people who had a baby while the baby doctor was doing those investigations was Maddie from here. So it's just that this book's 11 years later. But that was in the town of Spinifex. So that was the early introduction to Maddie. Because those books are connected, and I guess you could say Red Sand Sunrise is connected to The Baby Doctor, because the sister is the third sister from the three sisters in Red Sand Sunrise. So there is a loose connection between these three books, Red Sand Sunrise, The Baby Doctor, and The Bush Telegraph. But they can all be read alone. They're all standalone books. You don't have to read book 1 or 2 to understand what's going on, because the previous book people, while their names might appear briefly, they're not part of this story. They're a part of the past. So yeah, but sometimes people like to just hear a little snippet from a person they've read about in a previous book. So that's why I do it, because I actually love series. And I actually love meeting my characters again, because to me, those characters are real, and they don't just stop when I finish a book. They go on, they have lives, and it's very nice to meet them in another life, in another story, even if it's only fleetingly. So you'll find a lot of my books will just have a little touch of someone from the past, but it doesn't mean you have to read them in any specific order. What can we learn from the way Maddie and the locals handle her after her return to town? So Maddie goes in, and she's decided that people saved her when she was young, and she had this brand new baby, and she was being stalked by her evil boyfriend. And the publican, the older publican, and the doctor were the ones that lifted Maddie from this situation and protected her and moved her out of that situation where she could grow up over the next 11 years. But Maddie always felt like she had to be more, do more to make up for these people saving her. And she wants to stand on her own. She wants to prove, because she's got an 11-year-old daughter, and she wants her daughter to know that women are strong and powerful and have huge resources, great resilience, all the things that every woman has, because you need all those things when you have a baby, and you need all those things when you want to run a family, whether it's your babies or other people's babies. There is so much involved. And I think that Maddie takes it a little bit too far. So she's determined that she doesn't need anybody. And she moves back to Spinifex. and Maddie has to learn to allow other people to get closer, and that's her journey in the book. So the townspeople are really interesting. There's an older lady who runs the shop. The town's actually really surprising for Maddie because she comes back and it's really quite run down. It seems to be dying. The lady in the shop says the town's dying. I don't know why you came here. The nurses expected it to die. The pool's empty, lying there all cracked and broken. Everything's just run down, boarded up shops, and there's a little story in there too that you'll find in the book. But yeah, the town is actually really, really sad until Maddie comes and says, hey, actually you guys, you've got an amazing town here. If we all work together, we could actually lift it and encourage all those visitors and tourists that don't come this way anymore to come back. So yeah, that's a really nice aspect of the book. So meeting the locals, meeting people in situations where health emergency situations. So there's quite a bit of realistic medical drama in this book, as there is in most of my books. And that goes back to the fact that I just so admire the Outback medical professionals, the ones that are a long way from that help just behind the buzzer that you press and someone comes. Well, nobody comes. You can actually pick up the phone and you can get support. You might have a computer with a telehealth on it, and which you connect to. But basically it all comes down to the fact that you have to do it on your own. And I think that's something that is really heroic. It really is. I spoke to, I always speak to health workers in remote areas, but one of the people I spoke to was, there's birds tricking around over here and they just distracted me then, sorry. Yeah, one of the people I spoke to, I said to her, how do you deal with being the only nurse here when somebody, like, if somebody, a grey nomad, drives past and has a heart attack outside your place and you're the only person there, how do you manage? And she said, I just follow my protocols. I do the best that I can. I have support on the phone, and I know in my mind that that person is better off because I'm here. Because if I wasn't here, then they wouldn't have any help. So I think that strength and resilience and belief that you just do the best that you can, and most of the time that's going to really work out is just hugely encouraging and hugely brave, and I admire them so much. So Maddie's running this health centre, so we're going to have lots of interesting moments in this book. We're going to have a young boy newly diagnosed with diabetes. We're going to have an older man having a cardiac arrest. We're going to have the crisis that's the main part of the book, which is Maddie's crisis, but we'll hear about that later. I think you should read that bit. I'm not going to spoil that bit for you. But yeah, there was a lot of times in this book where I just stood back and watched Maddie and the nurses work, and I was amazed. So yeah, I'm probably a bit strange when all these people do all these things in my head and I'm just watching. But it's actually really, really great fun, and having that 30 or so years of obstetric emergency mostly experience is really, really satisfying for me to pass that across and to just highlight the strength and resilience that people do have. I guess, what do I most love about the struggle and about country life? Well, it has to be the people. It has to be going to a supermarket, or if you don't have a supermarket, the small corner store, and running into someone that you were there when they had their baby, and you'll be there when they have their next baby. Or in my husband's case, have someone come up and say, you saved my dad's life. There's all those amazing things. And the fact that, your kids go to school with people and that family is all connected, and you go to little sports events and all the people as you sit down with your coffee and your chair. There's no tearing competitiveness. There's just fun and an indulgence of how great it is to be living in the country with kids or with friends that you run into, and it's just that whole country life thing. And then of course, there's 200 acres on a swamp with some cows walking around who are just delightful. We don't actually own them, we just mind them. They all have names and we feed them green kitchen scraps, and it's just lovely. They come up and talk, and if my husband's got the loud music on here, then there's no neighbours for him to annoy. He was an ex-drummer, so he likes loud music. It annoys me. But I go down the end to my writing room and it's a long way away. I don't hear a thing. So there's lots of beautiful things about the country that you just, I'm spoiled to really, really enjoy. But mostly it's the people. It's that know that people care, know that people, when my dad died, instantly there was 20 people at the door with food and commiserations and asking if they could do anything for us, and people washing windows so that when the wake came back there was, the house was tidy. And it was just like, these are crazy things that, it's just, the country life is amazing, and I want to put that in my books. My continuing journey as a midwife turned author, I guess a lot of that's to do with the fact that I love sharing the fact that women are designed to have babies, Sorry about the siren there. Wow, that's pretty unusual because we're not even on the highway now. Women are designed to have babies, and as a midwife, that's my core belief, that we're designed to do it, but it's very nice to have help in case something goes a little bit pear-shaped. So, I like to have the occasional rapid birth. I like to have the occasional reminder that you're designed to have a baby if you're a woman. You're designed to be supportive if you're a man or if you're a partner. But it's just, it's my love, it's my passion, and it's part of my core story, is that birth is natural and we're designed to do it, and babies actually do find a way. So, it's really, that's me. So that's my romance inside me. What advice do I have for budding writers? I have lots of advice for budding writers. The main one is write. Seriously, it took me, when I turned 30, I decided that I actually wanted to write a book. My husband was working really hard. We had 4 young boys at that stage. Eventually we had 5, but we had 4 young boys at that stage, and life was tight. Finances were tight, and we were both working hard, and I worked on the 7 of the 8 days that he had off, and he minded the kids. And, we couldn't do much about our income, but it wasn't his problem because he was doing everything he could. If I wanted more money, then I needed to make a stand for that. So I decided that what I'd really do was write a romance book and make my fortune. Well, I didn't make my fortune, and it took me 10 years to write that, to finish an actual book. I wrote lots of tiny little bits of books and sent them away and thought, well, if they ask for it, I'll just finish that book and it'll be fine. But I never actually finished a book for 10 years until somebody said to me, finish the damn book before you actually send it away, Fiona, and prove that you can finish one. So I did. And then I sent it away, and I actually sold that book. And I've actually sold 46 books since then. So I guess my big advice to budding writers is, if you want to write, finish the book. It's just so easy to spend all this time polishing that first chapter, tweaking that sentence so it's absolutely perfect, and you don't actually ever get past chapter 3. So all I can say is, for goodness sake, go forward a little bit every day. You can play, but you need to go forward a little bit every day so that one day you will finish that book. When I started writing for Penguin Random House, the book length is at least twice as much as what I was doing before for my smaller romance books. And it was like, wow, can I actually write a book that's twice as long as the book that I've written before? And that goes back to beginning writers. So I said to myself, if I do 500 words every day, which is just 2 pages double-spaced, I will have this finished, 90,000 words, in 6 months. And I did. And it changed my life from rushing around to steady forward motion on my books. So if you want to write a book, please, even if it takes a year, 1 page a day forward. You can play if you want to, but 1 page a day forward will give you a book in 12 months. Imagine that. Some people wait 60 years to write their first book. If you want to write a book, write it, but go forward every day. What I found was that when I got to the end, it actually changed the way I thought about the beginning. So all that polishing I did right at the beginning, I didn't even use. So yeah, go forward, get to the end, and then you can start again and look at your book with a full picture and see how you tweak it, how you expand it, how you highlight these people. And all of a sudden, these two-dimensional characters become three-dimensional because you know them. They are your characters. You've seen their journey. You've cheered and you've cried and you've laughed with them. Now's the time. Go back to the beginning and make it beautiful, and then send it off. And that's another thing. A lot of people don't send them off. Send it off. Okay. So, what was my advice to writers? Oh, and there's one more thing. Find a tribe of people who do the same thing. I don't know if we're allowed to use tribe anymore, but find a bunch of people that you just connect with in writing, because nobody understands writing and trying to write and having writer's block or having writer's doubts about yourself unless you're another writer. So it's lovely to have the support of your family, and my husband has supported me since day one. He has just been so incredible. I mean, I used to drive to Sydney every year to go to the Romance Writers of Australia conference for that 10 years before I finished a book. I mean, I've still done it. I've been to every single conference in Australia because of his support, despite having 5 boys, despite having a job and his job. So finding family support is really important too, but you need to find a bunch of people who want to write or write with you, and that will really lift you when you're feeling that, why would anybody want to buy my work? Because you do have a story to tell. Everyone has a story to tell, and every story is different because everyone's life is different. So the same set of events told by different people is going to be different. Believe in yourself. You can do whatever you want to do. I truly, truly believe that. And if you decide, when I went to that first conference, that 10 years before I sold my first book, they had the published authors down the front of the room, and there was like reserved seats down the front of the room. And I looked at those seats and I said, one day I am going to sit down the bottom on those seats and be a published author. And it did take a long time, and by the time I got there, nobody sat the published authors down the front anymore. Anybody could sit there. But I sat there that year because I had achieved that goal that I saw in my mind. And just look at that goal that you have in your mind and you can achieve it. I wish you the very, very best of luck, and at least 1 page a day for the next year. Advice for writers. Which other authors inspire me? People who are consistent with their work, people who can put a book out every 6 months, every year, and it's a big one. People who consistently produce excellent work, have new ideas, believe in themselves. People like Marion Lennox from Melbourne, who's put 120 books in 40 years or something, just an amazing output of Carol Marinelli from Melbourne, who's also put out more than 115 books while she was as a single mother, bringing up 2 kids. Kerry Arthur, who was a New York Times bestseller, who's now self-publishing all her books because the publishing system changed, and she said, well, you know what, I can do this myself, and has a very nice living, thank you very much. So if people tell you that writers don't make a living, they do. My husband's always said that anything I make from my writing, I needed to spend on my writing, and that he didn't want any of it, which is very nice of him, thank you very much, and he still hasn't got any. But I travel with my writing. I have the opportunity to actually go and do crazy things, to write a book about, to research, and all the research that we do in Australia I do with my husband. All the research that I do overseas, because he's not interested in going overseas, I do with my girlfriends. And there is a book that Fiona McArthur has written called Midwife on the Orient Express, and I went on that Orient Express, and if you read that book you will feel like you've been on that Orient Express. But how cool is that? I've been to Egypt, I've been to America to these amazing conferences. When I was first published, Mills and Boon in England used to take their authors out to lunch at the American conferences. So all the editors flew across from England, and the bunch of Australians would fly across to the US, and they'd take us out for lunch. And my editor took me on a carriage ride around Central Park. And then they had this big ball called the Black and White Harlequin Mills and Boon Ball. It was at the Waldorf Centre in the Starlight, Waldorf Hotel in the Starlight Room. And here I was standing there in my off-the-shoulder black velvet, 35, never travelled overseas before. My books had got me that. I must have been 40. Must have been 40. Housewife from Kempsey with 5 kids and a working husband. And my books took me to America. And I had to fly and pay for our own way and our accommodation. But here I was standing in the Waldorf Astoria in my off-the-shoulder black velvet in New York at midnight, listening to this 6-piece band play New York, New York. And it was like, oh my God, my writing has got me this. So if you have your dreams, follow them, because there's some lovely, lovely things to do when you're feeling very happy with what you write. And I think that that's probably another reason for writers, another thought is that write what you love to read. I was always going to write a book with heroines that were strong. I was never going to write a wussy heroine because they used to really annoy me. And yeah, that was one of those central themes that I have, the strength in women. It's my central theme. What am I reading at the moment? Ooh, I'm actually having a paranormal bent. I went on a writing retreat, and one of the requirements was to read all these different genre books, and I discovered paranormal books, and I'd never read anything like that before, and I'm having a paranormal freak out at the moment. I'm just reading and reading and reading and just loving it. So Faith Hunter is my current to die for author. The last few months in COVID, well, look where I am. It's not been hard. My husband can't believe I've been home so long, no overseas trips at all. And I'm producing lots of work, so my love to you all. And for those doing it tough, I send you love, and I send you absolute admiration for your managing skills. I think you guys are amazing, and hang in there. And there's lots of love coming your way. What's the next big project for Fiona McArthur? I'm doing a book called The Rural Store, and after that there's one called The Opal Miner's Daughter. So there's 2 research trips for you. The Rural Store is not really much of a research trip. It's one of my sons has a rural store, and I just love the upriver community type setting, and the fact that during drought and bushfires and recovery and sales and babies born in unusual times, I'm really loving this book. I'm halfway through and just loving it. It comes out 1st of September next year. And after that, there's a trip to either Cooper Pedy or Lightning Ridge so that I can get the setting right for my Opal Miner's Daughter, which is a Sydney doctor going out to find her mother who's escaped from the world and bought herself a mining lease. So that will be fun too. So I better stop here. That's all for me. Thank you for joining me, and to Gold Coast Libraries for hosting me. I had the best time at Runaway Library. Seriously, I had the best time. You guys are amazing. And you can stay in touch with me on my website, FionaMcArthurAuthor.com. Look me up on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter as Fee Catches Babies. And look after yourselves, and I really, really hope you enjoy the Bush Telegraph, which comes out on the 1st of September for Penguin Random House. Thank you.